Okay.
All right. So this is Mona Dwyer Helpline. So last week you were presented with a draft budget that was pre-COVID, and we had our revenues were based on the prior year's flows, and operating expenses and capital projects were budgeted as if it would be a normal or a typical year for the sewer and water. In a normal year, the sewer and water earn 65 to 70% of their annual revenue in the third quarter. And it goes without saying that COVID-19 is expected to impact the island's tourist-driven economy, and therefore the sewer and water will likely feel that impact the most in their third quarter revenues. So the draft budgets that you're looking at today reflect that estimated loss in revenue during the high season. I've worked with both the superintendents to reduce expenses wherever possible. Both budgets draw a significant amount from the reserves to fund the operating and capital expenditures. This is tolerable for a single year economic downturn, but it's not something that should be relied upon as a long-term strategy. July and August actual flows will be very telling, either allowing us more flexibility going forward or requiring further mid-year reductions of expenditures. So I'm going to go over what changes were made to the draft budgets you were presented with last week. We'll start by looking at the water budget.
So Mona, the summary on here is
yeah.
the changes as it relates to last week, correct?
That is correct. So the budget that was presented last week, the pre-COVID budget.
Okay.
I'm going to go over what changes we've made to that budget that you saw there since then. Does that make sense?
Hey, Mona, did you do, was
Yeah.
there sort of like a blanket theory or estimate that you took into the whole budget? I'm just curious.
As in for the drop in revenue?
Yeah, I mean, did you use like the percentage, or how did you go about
so we did. We used a different percentage for sewer and water, kind of based on the trends we were seeing right now. And I worked with both Amy and John and Dylan on that. So for instance, for the water company, we're projecting, or, this budget is based on a 50% reduction in the summer flow.
Did you use any kind of a scale other than 50%, or you just figure that that's a good starting spot?
Yes.
Okay.
Mona, can I just interject for a second?
Yep.
We did run a couple of different scenarios, both for water and sewer, that we have in our background. But as we have more data about how the flows are materializing, each of these are our best recommendation today based on what we're seeing as things do start to open up. So water is pretty consistently staying in the 50% range. So while we've run other scenarios, this is really what we're comfortable putting forward today.
Okay, that's cool. I just wanted to know what the thought process was. That's all.
Mm-hmm.
Cool.
So,
okay.
We've also, both Dylan and I have also been talking to Jeff Wright as well, just as like we've all been talking about, what percentage, and he's similar too. So it's kind of across the board. And me, Dylan, and Jeff have had a few conversations and emails going back and forth about how far they're down as well. So,
well, I would love to hope it would be at 50%. I think I'd be very happy with that.
Yeah, me too.
All right.
Yeah,
So
me three, actually.
I won't interrupt anymore.
Sure you will.
So this budget draws $246,508 from reserves between what's needed for the operating budget and for the capital budget. If we start at the top with revenues, we've accounted for that 50% reduction in summer flows. The reason the percent change is only 39.5 is because we've incorporated a 12.5% increase to the user fees. We have
That was already in the budget though, correct?
that was in the last draft. Yeah. Just in preparation for the water
Okay.
main project, kind of have to keep moving forward with that.
Yeah, we're
Absolutely.
tying that rate increase with the water main.
Water main, right. The customer charges increased to 12.5% to continue moving towards the goal of 100% debt service funding. We have reduced the penalty fees, the budgeted penalty fees to $5,000. You know, as a significantly slower tourist season, that's going to result in fewer customers exceeding their allocation. We have postponed the increase that was budgeted for the standby use fee. We removed the meter services increase. That line moves in relation to wage increases. So we removed that. And then we have our contribution from reserves there for the operating budget, $204,508. That's a 159.6% increase from fiscal year 20. And this draw would put reserves at 56% of their target reserve levels. Any questions before we move on to expenses? Sounds like no. Okay. All right. We reduced the wages and payroll taxes. We removed the 2.5% wage increase.
Can I interrupt just for a moment? This is Brad.
Yep.
I just noticed that Sandra and their speakers are on mute. Is that intentional, or because if they have a question, no one's going to hear it?
John muted himself, and I didn't notice Sandra was muted. Thank you. I unmuted her. Sorry, Sandra.
All right. I thought I muted myself.
Oh,
That's fine.
I unmuted you anyways.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Sorry about that.
You know me, if I have to say something, I'm saying it.
You'll find a way.
Well, we don't have a picture of you either, so.
That's okay. You don't want.
So we reduced the wages and payroll taxes. We removed that 2.5% wage increase. We reduced overtime based on a talk with the superintendent. We reduced the consultant other line. We reduced that $1,500 based on projects planned for fiscal year 21. We reduced the training and travel line and postponed all elective training opportunities. Electricity was reduced 25% relative to the decreased water production. Obviously, you know, producing less would require less electricity. Supplies were reduced $6,000 due to decreased production and elimination of some extra projects that had been in store. Building maintenance decreased $2,000 due to some other small projects being deferred. Being that the water company is purchasing a brand new truck, or the plan is for that to happen in fiscal year 21, we felt comfortable reducing the vehicle maintenance line $1,000. System maintenance, we increased that $1,000 to account for tank maintenance that coincides with the cathodic protection program, which is still in this budget. And then fire protection maintenance decreased $1,500 just due to scaled back maintenance for fiscal year 21. As far as the truck replacement, we were able to cut that into, because we're planning on a 3-year financing term for that. So we reduced that to $12,000 as opposed to the $36,000. So with that being said, do we have any questions about the water budget you're looking at today?
I think it looks good. I think that you've put some thought into that. And if we add, you know, I think your percentage decreases on electricity usage and everything based on the projected lower income level. That's probably fair. So the system maintenance going down 20%, is that safe as far as, do you think, John?
Yeah, I think we'll be all right. And like Mona said, depending on when we get to August and September, we'll have a better idea like how she worded it. If we have stronger flows, we'll have some greater flexibility. If we have weaker flows, then we can trim things back as much as possible. So
Luckily, only 2 or 3.
We're very lucky to have a front end loaded fiscal year.
Absolutely.
So
This is McNerney. I got a question. So has anybody, I guess this one's for Mona and Amy. Have you guys thought about, or are we just assuming that everybody's going to pay their bills this year? Are we looking at the fact that cash flows could be down in terms of people actually paying their bills?
You're talking bad debt, basically, correct?
No, it's not necessarily bad debt. I mean, eventually they're going to have to pay one way or the other. But the fact of the matter is cash flow for individuals may be significantly reduced this year. Some of the customers may actually go out of business. I mean, I hate to say that, but I mean, I've talked to a few people that, if we're at 50%, if they're at 50% budget, they're not going to make it. And I'm just saying, so I'm just wondering if we've considered the fact that, all these things are assuming that people pay their bills even at 50%. And I mean, typically speaking, they do. Because business is booming in the summertime, but I have some concerns, I guess.
Sure. We haven't applied a collection rate to the user fees. We historically don't for sewer and water. And I don't think it's necessary to do at this point, although we do need to monitor and manage cash flow pretty carefully, because both companies at this point have a reasonable cash reserve position that even if our collection rate is lower than we're used to, I do think we have enough cash in hand to float the companies for a reasonable amount of time. And as we know, we do have a mechanism for ultimately collecting those revenues.
Yeah, I got it. Sure.
And,
no,
we just as a backstop, both sewer and water do have the authority to issue revenue anticipation notes in anticipation of future fees. So that's a tool we have in our toolbox if we ever needed to use that. And that authority is granted by the voters of the town. So we have a couple resources for managing cash flow at different levels. And so it's a good question, and I think we're protected at this point against that.
Nice. Okay. Now, and I'm to understand that you've basically taken the 2.5% increase across the board. I guess that's going to go for sewer also.
That is yes, for sewer as well.
All right.
There's one license increase that's in store.
I'm sorry?
And there's one license increase that's included, but
Okay.
Any across the board raises was cut.
You guys, and I guess I put this out to John and Dylan, and I know I'm sort of jumping ahead, but I don't think things are going to get any cheaper on Block Island to live. And I don't know if where we're at in terms of overtime and in terms of what the earning abilities of our employees are. But there's groceries are probably going to get more expensive if the predictions are true, and meaning the essentials. And I got some thoughts on whether or not that's and what the difference would be if you included in terms of dollars on the budget, if you included the 2.5% times 8 people or 9 people or however many it is. I'm just putting it out there. These are just thoughts that are in my mind. So, like Sandra says, if you don't want me to speak, you got a lot of chance of that.
You know, I don't disagree with you, Peter, and you know, I wish, you know, we could give raises, but you know, the optics is really bad. You know, you're also speaking about, you know, people going out of business, and I think the optics are bad. You know, Dylan and I we've spoken with our employees. I think they are fully understanding what the situation is, and they don't have any issues with it. And I think, you know, everyone's going to have to tighten their belt in their own home budget, and, you know, across the board, that goes for all of us. So, and they're understanding. I think they feel that they're happy to have a job at this point. And
hey, if you have the employees buy-in, I got no problem with it. I just, if the employees, if we're making this as sort of a unilateral decision without the buy-in of the employees, then I guess I would like to hear what they have to say. But if you guys are comfortable that the staff on both sewer and water are okay with that, not that they have the ultimate say, but I don't want to stub my toe, or our toe, if you will. Yeah, just saying.
Dylan Shea, Sewer Superintendent. Yes, Pete, general mood here is just that everyone here is grateful to be working right now. I said we're looking at all options and nothing is off the table, and they understand completely that with reduced flow, we're going to be, you know, taking in limited revenue. And you know, to echo John, the optics, look, you know, the perspective of from the community as we're taking raises and they're suffering. You know, we all agree that you know, we should wait or consider it carefully at this point.
We had a few years back during the recession where we had a couple of years where we didn't do raises either, and everyone got by all right. So we were happy when they came back.
I'm just putting it out there, man.
Yeah, I will say, sorry to interrupt or interject.
Okay.
I will continue to keep license raises on the table, you know, for any employee that needs those. Jamie will be going to his grade 2 exam, and I talked to him about that, and I do not want to take that off the table for him. I think it's a morale booster. I think it's, you know, the low-hanging fruit that he needs, and I think that, as to your point, Pete, that will help him in these times as well. So overall, everyone else so far has expressed an understanding that, you know, times are what they are, and, you know, some sacrifices may need to be made. So that's
Cool.
where we're at with that.
Well, you know, it's been on mind. You and I have spoken about it, so I just figured that I would bring it up and talk about it with everybody.
Sure.
Thanks.
I would like to, I just have one question, I don't need to say question. I'm more I'm concerned about a lot of things, but I worry about when, you know, we take money away from maintenance and we're not maintaining. I know that you guys at the sewer plant, and I'm sure John does too, you do a lot of the stuff, you know, in-house, but what are you taking into account? And maybe you discussed that before I logged in. What are you taking into account that you're not going to be doing? Or not going to be able to do?
It's a good question. On the water end, you know, I feel safe. We're still going ahead with, you know, the small things, and, you know, some other things can wait, but the cathodic protection, we're going to move ahead. We've had a lot of discussion about that, and we're draining the tanks. That only happens once every decade. It's past its useful life, and we're going to do it. It's, you know, you got to weigh your options. You know, the tanks are a really expensive asset. And do we want to forego, you know, the cathodic protection protects them from corroding, do you want to have a bigger problem down the line with replacing the tanks faster, or do you want to maintain it? So, you know, those projects I've assessed and said, yeah, the cathodic protection needs to happen. This is our opportunity, and we don't want to depreciate our asset faster, especially when it's an important and a large asset. So I feel like the projects that that we've looked at, you know, I still would like to move forward with that one. The smaller things, you know, it's okay. And some of our maintenance doesn't cost anything. I mean, it does, it costs labor, but not all of our maintenance requires large amounts of money going out the door. We, you know, just going out and doing the distribution, we don't have to buy extra equipment or do anything. We have all that stuff. That's, you know, some of it's just labor intensive and not hiring a contractor to do things. So building maintenance,
we've had discussions
we deferred
too,
some building maintenance, you know, but that's all right. That can wait for another year. The building's not going to fall over. So
this is Brad Martha. This is all something that John's been discussing and thinking about in detail much longer than the current process as well. So the project that has to be done to stop corrosion is something that really needs to be done, because it would end up costing a whole lot more in the long run. But other things day-to-day wise, I think he and his staff have done a great job, and I know Dylan's doing the same thing down there with regards to what can be handled and what can be put on hold for this year at least.
And sometimes lower flows is going to mean some lower maintenance, maybe with membranes. And, you know, when you're not working the machinery as hard this summer, you're probably going to have some savings and some maintenance there as well.
And if by some miracle we end up having budgets that are on the high side, then increased maintenance will be justified.
Yeah, yeah. So thank you, Sandra. I appreciate the question.
No worries. I
Absolutely.
just, you know, like building maintenance, not that it was such a high budget to begin with, but it's down 60%. So I'd like to think that things that you're, you know, you are not going to be doing, you're aware of, and you know that you can do that.
So
Yeah.
we brought the building maintenance back to a normal level. You know, I started a siding window replacement, you know, and I'd like that to keep on going every year. That's why it's up at 20,000. We took aside, we bought windows where,
I see.
yeah, so that it's going back to what we usually are used to spending. So I'm not taking on another side of the building on next year. And
Right.
like I said, you know, it needs to happen at some point.
Right.
It doesn't need to happen. You know, it can wait a few more years to get to the other sides of the building.
Okay.
So that's why it's going down. It's going back to the normal level of what we're used to doing. We're just not taking on extra.
Got it.
Yeah.
Dylan Chase, Sewer Superintendent. I too, I just want to speak on this because you're going to see a significant reduction in system maintenance for me. I had pushed a lot of maintenance items into capital projects. I went through, this is my first budget working on a loan. So I went through every line with, I guess, a fine tooth comb and looked at all recurring expenses over a year's time. And I was able to get a good handle on, you know, where Chris's thoughts were on projections, where my thoughts are on projections, what we need and what we want. And I was able to separate the two. And I really went through inventory. We are in a good place. Of course, there's things that need to be done. You know, there's a lot of things that need to be done. But I would never defer something that absolutely had to be done as it pertains to operations and maintaining permit. You know, some good news is we were able to do some fixes in-house. We had some problem with our grit removal system some time ago, and I was able to order some of the parts and do the rebuild myself. Essentially, that saved a large amount of money. So I was happy about that. I do feel like our redundancy and inventory is satisfactory for us to move forward through this year.
So Dylan, tell them how much you saved on doing that project by yourself.
Like $30,000.
Nice.
He
Yeah,
can't
pretty
sleep
awesome.
at smile.
I have a question on the revenue side. Maybe it was discussed. I'm sorry, I missed that first 7 minutes, but on boat pump out revenue.
Oh.
So in 2019, we only had $6,900 in pump out.
I don't think we've gotten into sewer yet.
Oh, sorry. A little ahead of myself.
We can. Does anyone have any other questions about water, or do you want to move on? Or
Sure.
I think we're good on water right now.
Yep.
All right. So moving on to sewer. So with the budget that you have here, it draws just for the operating budget, $315,355 from reserves, and then an additional $26,720 for the capital project. So starting at the top, we projected the user revenues or the user fees with a 30% reduction in summer flows. The result is a $341,374 reduction compared to the fiscal year 20 budget. We reduced penalty fees just like we did over on the water side. Sure.
This is Brad, sorry. The 30% reduction versus the 50% on the water, what's the logic there? I just wanted to kind of understand that.
Sure. We have,
Because I don't see a graph there, that's why.
Dylan?
sorry, Mona, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, please, you can go.
Okay. So I've been looking at flows. Obviously, there's some I&I we have to contend with. Looking at billing, we were down 30% last month. We're close to that, likely in flows this month. The month's not over. I am not able to put together a specific chart in relation to flows because of that I&I factor. It's going to be way off base. For example, like we peaked up at where 70,000. Our average was like 50,000 over the past month. The inch and a half of rain is a significant factor in the flow. So that being said, I think 30 to 40% is going to be a reasonable estimate at this time. Also considering the fact that we have a different customer base. I have some large users that John doesn't have, namely a lot of the hotels and such. So that is where I'm at with it. A lot of it depends on how full they are. But so far, that's what I'm seeing. John is down 50% or so. I'm down 30 to 40%. So there is a divergence there.
Okay.
And again, that's something we can kind of look at again, after August or after September even, and it can steer how we move forward. This is our best estimate based on the information that we have right now and the results that we're seeing right now as far as metered flow.
Okay.
All right. So penalty fees also reduced just like over on the water side, just because we're going to have less people exceeding their allocation, less customers exceeding their allocation. The septic waste disposal, we're expecting that we will have reduced demand there. So that was reduced by 25%. And we also deferred the rate increase that was originally included in the the budget you saw last week. So what ends up happening is the contribution from reserves increases 78% from the prior year to fund the operating budget alone. And combined with what's being taken for the capital budget, this draw is going to put the sewer commission at approximately 84% of their target reserve level. We were at 98% otherwise. So any questions on the revenue before we move forward with expenses?
I just had, my question before was, we only collected
Yes, right.
$6,900 in pump out fees last year?
Right, and now we have a meter there, which I think will help more accurate reading.
We hope.
And anyone else have anything to say?
No, I thought we had a meter last year, but I could be wrong. Okay.
Let me interject on that one. The meter last year, it was the first initial installation. The pump is, there's a high vibration for that pump. And unfortunately, what happened mid-season was a circuit board was dislodged due to that vibration. So it reset all the calibration and it wasn't accurate. So that's where that stood. And I don't know, I believe that the values taken were just as from prior years from harbors themselves. But I can't be sure on that. Amy would have to speak to that.
Sure. Well, we did end up using more of the harbors reported values than the pump calculated values, although we were starting to see a convergence of those two by the end of the season, which is great. As far as the 6,900, I do want to double check that number because it doesn't feel right, but I'll take a look.
Okay.
Just make sure it's
Seems a little low. That's
accurate.
why I asked. And so then if we're at, 10, I mean, wasn't last summer like a beautiful summer? Were we not full?
It was a great summer on the harbor. There are always those challenges of the self-reported estimates from pump out, and so those numbers were low, but I don't think they were that low.
And July, August, and September are reflected in the fiscal year 20 data there, the 10,884.
I see. Oh, I see. Okay.
And also, I just want to interject that this year, the pump was calibrated again, and I installed a piece of foam to protect that circuit board from coming dislodged again. Hopefully that'll rectify that.
Will you like mark your calendar or something like that to like send somebody out there to check it midsummer or?
I'm going to be checking it. I was checking it week to week last year. I'm going to be doing it for the initial season when I see some boats out there. I'll probably be doing the same and just checking back, looking at the data and checking with Kate and seeing where we're at, making sure that our numbers match.
Mm-hmm. Cool.
Good catch, Sandra.
Once in a while I can, pay attention.
Just saying.
All right. So moving forward with expenses, we already talked about the wages and payroll taxes and the reduction of the 2.5% wage increase. We reduced overtime. We didn't fully take it away, but we reduced it to a level that the superintendent felt was reasonable. Consultant engineer was reduced based on postponement of projects planned for fiscal year 21, and also the effective recovery of engineering planning fees, which are reimbursed by the customers. There are some fees that are gym related, but you're going to see them down in the capital budget side, and those are related to the resiliency project. About 26,000, I think. Let's see, we have the meter services. You saw that over on the water side. We had eliminated that increase, and so that's just reflected here. On the sewer side, their expense, there will be no increase in that fee. Conference training and travel also reduced, postponing any elective training opportunities. Sludge disposal decreased $5,000 to account for the reduced flows they're going to have to treat, and also a change in processing methods where they're able to send more off in one haul. We decreased supplies $2,200, eliminating some non-critical purchases. Lab and supplies was reduced $4,000 due to an inventory revisions made in fiscal year 20. Essentially, the purchases ended up happening fiscal year 20 instead of 21, so they're taken care of early. Lab testings increased $1,000 due to new testing required by Rhode Island Resource Recovery for the sludge. System maintenance was reduced $10,000 based on the revised operational needs for fiscal year 21. Generator maintenance reduced $1,000 to reflect maintenance needs for the coming year. And then we have our capital equipment increased $5,000. It was that's for the garage doors, and it was at $60,000 the last budget. We added $5,000 to bring in the engineering fees and the bidding process. Everything else going forward remains the same from the budget that you saw last. The capital budget still includes those resiliency expenses, resiliency project expenses, and then the service building apartment budget remains unchanged. Questions? I should note that there's no rate increase, as you probably noticed, there's no rate increase included on this budget at all in either user fees or tax surcharge.
Mm-hmm. All right, well, so here you go. It's Pete McNerney. I'd like to know, again, here we go with this rate increase thing. You know where I stand on this, the same place I've stood for the last 8 or 9 years. I realize it's whatever, it's tough times and so forth and so on. But again, where are we going to be next year in terms of rate increase and so forth and so on if next year is only 75% of what last year was? And I think we've got to consider a small rate increase. I don't care what it is. Let's call it 3%. Let's call it 4%. Whatever the number is. But I am against the no rate increase thing because our equipment isn't getting any younger and it's not getting any cheaper to replace.
Okay.
So I don't know where we stand on that, but I think I'd like to consider a rate increase.
Want me to? Okay.
And I put out there. I'd like to see a 5% increase.
Okay, so if we do a 5% increase, that's going to reduce the amount that we take from reserves by about $42,000.
Pretty significant.
Yeah.
And there you have it. Any other thoughts on that from anybody?
If we could survive, I would not want a rate increase. If I were a user, I would not be happy.
I'm sure, and I agree. If I was a user, I wouldn't want a rate increase ever, but that's not what makes our company go round.
I totally understand that. And it's really going to be you. So we're gonna ask the town, everybody to kick in for this water main line, and then we're gonna say, oh, and by the way, we know that you're all going to be sucking wind this year, and we want more money. I understand, but it's going to be that's a hard push, boy.
Mm-hmm.
That's just my opinion.
I agree. So I didn't say it's an easy push, but from a running the business standpoint, they're not going to want to take it on the chin next year because they didn't this year. And I've heard it before, and so have you, because we've both been doing this just a couple of times. and they say, well, why didn't you give us a small increase last year? Why do we have such a big one this year? So it's a double-edged sword at best.
Why don't we look at a 2.5% and a 5% option?
Yep. So 2.5% would decrease what we take from reserves by about 21,000.
Which is still significant without probably being overly burdensome. And I agree with Pete. You know, we've gotten in trouble. There's been trouble in the past when there's been no increases at all, and then you got to play catch up. At least this way, it's recognizing the fact that, you know, it's still going to be there, but maybe we're trying to lessen the impact, especially for this coming season.
So I'd like to hear from Dylan on what your thoughts are.
Well, my thoughts are that I don't believe that anything is getting cheaper. Our infrastructure is aging. In a perfect world, the rate increase would be the right decision. It is a hard decision to make, but I would be interested in. I mean, that just like Brad said, and as you said, you know, $20,000, $40,000 is significant. The drawing from reserves is not sustainable. We don't know what's going to happen in the future. Prices could continue to go up. The economy could continue to falter. It's a big unknown. So my thought is I'd be interested in seeing the 2.5% and 5%, and seeing where we stand with that in a meeting.
Cool. I have a couple other things. So Bill and I have been looking pretty hard at a couple of things, and I give him a lot of credit. I mean, he didn't put there how much he saved the company by doing what he did, but we've been looking at a few other opportunities to save significant amounts of money. The garage doors, for instance, and the engineering that goes along with them, and some of the other things that we've spent. I won't say needless money on, but Dylan is doing, frankly, a hell of a job down there, and he is. If you think this will be the last $30,000 he saves, you're not spot on. This year we've got some things that we have to do because they're already on the horizon, and we're going to move forward with them. But we're going to find ways to save money. And I mean, just a small little project we're going to do down by the old Harbor Pump Station and do a little raking and stuff ourselves. I mean, that's going to save us $3,000 or $4,000 off the bill we were presented. There's a whole lot of things that we are looking at, and that he has done. He did a lot of brush clearing so we could find the markers to make it easier for the surveyors, and the list goes on and on. And so I think that he's gonna help our budget at the end of this COVID thing, and him and his team down there. And I just think that we get something to look forward to. That's all I would say on that.
I appreciate that. Thanks.
All right.
I don't have any comments on the budget.
So where do we want to go for the next meeting?
I'm happy with what you've got on here. I would like to see the proposed changes with the increase on the sewer side, but I like what I see.
I don't even know that we really have to have it. I hate to say this, or maybe I'd like to say it. I don't think we have to have another meeting on the budget, quite frankly. The only thing that we're really looking at is on the sewer side. We're looking at a 2.5 versus a 5% increase, and somewhere in between, which is 42,000 to 21,000, unless my math My ears weren't
Correct.
listening. And I would err on a compromise on that, and let's call it right smack dab in the middle of 2.5 and 5, and that way it's and I'd like to just see us go with that in terms of presenting it to the users.
I'd like to know what that increase is on average per whatever that is per thousand, or however we're going to do that, so that
Do you have
we
that,
can answer
Mona?
that question for people.
Do you have that, Mona?
As far as how it affects the user,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Is that what you're saying?
Yep.
I can get that number. I don't have it right with me. I have the, would need to pull up the rate design sheet here.
You can get it. Yes.
Yep, I can definitely get it.
Can you have it like now, or is this something that we'd have to go back and have another meeting about?
I can have it. It would be based on normal flows, not the expected reduced flows. Do you know what I mean? So let's just say, and John can help me out here, the low impact user, you usually estimate that they use, how much is that? They use 1,000 a month. Is that kind of what you usually estimate on the rate design sheet?
The low impact. No, like 4,000 a
Yeah.
month. 4,000.
Okay.
No.
So
Oh, what
let's
the
just
what
do
the
the math
impact
real
would be to the year-round users? What you're going for?
Yep.
Yeah, 4,000. You know, is probably a good 4,000 a month.
Uh-huh. Yeah. Yeah, it's not something I can just pull together right now, unfortunately.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
yeah. You don't want to do that on the.
I'd
fly.
rather see something accurate so we can make a good decision on it. I'm leaning more towards the 2.5, but it maybe something in the middle is feasible. But I mean, it's going to be a tough year for everyone, commercial and homeowner. But I do think it's important to have something in there.
So, I do believe on this that at our monthly meeting where we will, have a public hearing for this, that could probably be made at that meeting. Amy, do you think, we've done that in the past. We've, when there's been a rate increase up in the air, and then you can decide and have your public hearing, adopt the budget, and decide in that meeting so you don't have to have another budget work session. If Amy's okay with that, I think that's what we've done in the past.
Yeah, essentially you'd adopt the budget as presented and discussed today, and then make an amendment at the public hearing based on the scenarios that Mona's going to bring for you.
I'm good with that if everybody else is.
Is there any way to send those numbers around without having a meeting so we can look at it as well beforehand?
That's no problem with me. Did I hear a 2.5% and then a 3.75? Is that what I was hearing?
That's what
2.5 to 5.
Well, we got.
Okay,
so
I thought there was a split in the middle option.
I said that I'd be willing to compromise my 5 and put it in the middle.
Okay.
So let's look at the 2.5 and the 3.75. I want to see the end impact for people, because every dollar is going to count this year. Water obviously is going to be going up as well. So it's but I don't want to do. I agree with Pete. I don't want to do nothing, because that's gotten us into trouble in the past.
Sure. Okay. Are we going to have a meeting on the 1st?
On the what? On the when?
On the 1st.
The 1st of
optional
June.
meeting? Yes.
No, I thought that what we just said, no meeting on the 1st. Or that's what we're
Okay.
angling.
Just making sure, just confirming that.
Yeah. Oh,
We're angling to not have a meeting on the 1st unless there's something that's a surprise with seeing the numbers that you send
Sure.
out.
All right.
Which I don't.
No problem.
Nice.
Okay, sounds good. That's all I have.
Okay.
Unless anyone- Yeah.
And I wanted to go in the minutes that Brad agreed with me twice at this meeting.
No, don't do
So
that.
noted.
That's unheard of. No, you have to make a motion for that, so I say no.
All right.
So are we good? Do we want to talk about item 2 as well?
All right, let's go back to. I
Forgot about
back
it
to
last
the beginning
time.
of
That's
this
why
agenda here.
we almost adjourned the meeting last time and went, whoa, whoa, whoa.
Discussion of
Have
options.
there been any big changes as far as process and relation to COVID? I mean, the big change
have,
in the
actually.
island's not going to come till next week. So, okay.
There actually have been. So one of the angles that David had mentioned last week was sort of the hope that the gathering size would dovetail with our need to have a meeting. And that's still on the table as a hope. But at the same time, the governor and the Department of Health have sort of changed their course and agreed to issue guidance on how communities can hold annual financial meetings, and making those an exempt activity and allowed under their guidance. We do not have the written guidance yet, and so we're waiting on that to understand what the rules around it are. But it is looking more favorable for us to be able to hold a regular meeting if we wanted to, and if we wanted to adhere to those guidelines. So it's still in flux, but there is progress. We have sort of 2 options on the table now, 2 viable options.
Mm-hmm. Good.
And that would go for the
When you
that would go for the bond authorization.
if you have a synopsis of what those options are, is that something you can send around? Or
As soon as it's ready, I'll send it around.
Okay, all right,
Yeah, as soon as it's ready.
fair enough.
I'm waiting
That could be
on a lot of different. All communities, or 13 communities in Rhode Island, are waiting for that written guidance. So I expect it any day. But until I see the words that they put
many
around
aspects
it,
of every community are waiting for stuff right now.
Yes. John, to your question.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, there's now possibility that your water borrowing question does show up on a real regular financial town meeting, possibly in July.
Oh, okay.
But don't hold me to that today.
No.
It might change tomorrow.
No, yeah, of course. Well, I mean, maybe we don't even have the space requirement, the guidance might, lend us out of a spatial requirement or something that we don't have. Or
Exactly, that's what we're waiting
we'll
on.
have to go by the guidance. And we might not have the space for that. So.
Well, I have one question that's not necessarily budget related, but it's a little bit has to do with it, I guess. Is it now that Amy, you're going to love this, I know, but now that budgets and interest rates are down low, are we revisiting the fact that we might be able to refinance our debt and at a lower rate, and it doesn't make sense?
Sure. We touched on this a little bit last meeting. It's always something we look at. It hasn't been advantageous in the past, and the challenge with water and sewer in refinancing those USDA loans is that the terms of those loans are so long that to go from a 40-year term to a 20-year term creates an annual payment that is too big to be digested by the companies. But we continue to look at it, and we will continue to evaluate. There's a good chance we're going to refinance on the town side in the next 2 months. And so as we go through that exercise, we always run the sewer and water loans as well.
Yeah, it'd be kind of nice to piggyback them both and make it make sense for everybody.
Yeah, but if you're looking at, is all of ours financed at 40 years, cutting it in half is going to hurt. So
exactly, that's why it's tough to do.
We do have some that have been around for quite a while, right? I mean, I don't know what quite a while means, because I'm not looking at how long these notes are going, but it seems to me, if memory serves me, that some of our debt, some of our large notes have been around, I don't know, 10, 15 years already, no?
There are a couple that, particularly on the sewer side, that were on the margin last time we took a look. And so it's possible they've crossed over the threshold this time.
Nice.
We'll look and I'll let you know.
Cool. Thanks, Amy. Are we ready to adjourn?
I'll make a motion, we adjourn.
I'll second it. All those
All in favor?
Aye.
Brad, yes.
Sandra,
Pete,
Sandra, unmute. Hmm.
Geez, you can't get her to be quiet when you want her to.
wow.
I don't think she's, no, she is on here.
I'm here. Sorry, I couldn't find the mute button for a second. And by the way, Brad, I heard what you said. Aye.
Thank you. The ayes have it. Motion passed.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.